Hoamsa, like Gyeomgangsan, is a temple that has hitherto received little attention, but leaves very many questions. Although Hoamsa was the largest-scale temple in Korean history, a temple that Jigong, the greatest figure in the international Buddhist community, personally built after giving a prophecy designating it as a place of ascetic practice of a Buddha of the past, and a temple that played a decisive role in Joseon history, it has been examined only from the Buddhist aspect. The point that has hitherto received little attention regarding Hoamsa is the background of its rise to prominence in the early Joseon period. Although the period background against which Hoamsa came to be built as the largest temple in Korean history has been studied, the background against which, after its construction, it came to prominence down into the Joseon period, through the great master Muhik and Taeoyi Sungchai, has hardly been illuminated. The site of Hoamsa is a place that the great master Jigong, who had been an Indian prince, visited, spending some 2 years for the remains of the Demudal Bodhisattva of Gyeomgangsan, at the urging of Naeong and the great master Muhik, who had gone to study in Beijing, China. While Jigong was revered in Beijing as an incarnation of Sakyamuni, and was serving the Yuan royal house, at the site of Hoamsa, Jigong said that this place resembled Suchin Umbulsa, an Indian place of ascetic practice of a Buddha of the past, and in later ages the place where Kasyapa Buddha preached the Dharma came to be regarded not only as Suchin Umbulsa, but also as the site of Hoamsa. As grounds for this, he called the site of Hoamsa the Three Mountains and Two Waters, consisting of 3 mountains and 2 waters. In the 3 mountains and 2 waters, the 2 waters were identified with the Imjin River, and the Han River, and the 3 mountains with Samgaksan. In fact, today's Hoamsa lies between Shinbozan, Haeryongsan, and Wangbangsan, with Pochen and Dongducheon in its surroundings. Although there is also research holding that the very term site of Kasyapa Buddha is a trace of Dangan, the 3 mountains and 2 waters carries yet more meaning in that it includes not only the sense of an auspicious site, but also the yin-yang and 5 phases concept of Samchin Yarji. That Hoamsa is a monastery site of the age of former Buddhas is said to be the highest status in Korean Buddhism, one that even Bulguksa did not receive in the past. On this point, existing research also holds that Hoamsa's being a monastery site of the age of former Buddhas is an exaggeration of Jigong's words made in order to save Hoamsa, which had fallen into crisis of dissolution after Naeong's death. However, Jigong personally designated the site to his disciple Naeong, and although it was built by King Gongmin, for some reason it was held in very great importance down to the early Joseon period. This can be understood as an extension of the interpretation of the Demudal Bodhisattva. First, Kasyapa Buddha is the 6th of the 7 Buddhas said to appear in the age of Sakyamuni Buddha, the Buddha immediately preceding Sakyamuni. As mentioned above, the very concept of Buddhas of the past is already related to pre-Buddhist culture. Kasyapa Buddha appears in Korean ancient history as Gosubwan Buya, and in modern place names to there is the Caspian Sea in the Middle East. That Hoamsa was held in importance down into the Joseon period may be said to involve an intention different from Jigong's intention. Hoamsa is, first of all, connected with the Withwodo retreat. Like Napoleon's Battle of Waterloo, the decisive occasion of the Withwodo retreat is said to have been the information reported by the great master Muhik, who had gone to spy on the Yuan dynasty. He was known as the great master Muhik, meaning that he had learned nothing, but in fact, Muhik was of the faction that had studied in Beijing, then the center of the world, and was a figure who served as his masters Jigong and Naeong, the greatest intellects of the age. The great master Muhik is identified as the figure who early on met Yi Sungchai, and Plan Joseon. Muhik appears as a figure erudite in ancient history who had the country's name chosen as Joseon, and had the palaces of Seoul, such as Gyeongbodong, built in accordance with astronomy. Muhik is even regarded as being of the Yonghabak clan, a family through which Bak Jisang's Budoji had been transmitted. In the end, Muhik may be seen as having planned the reconstruction of Hoamsa together with Naeong, as a scheme for the revival of ancient history. Shinbozan, where Hoamsa is located, is also related to Hangcheon-yeam, the epicenter of the Dangan faith revived from the late Goryeo period. Another link between the great master Muhik and ancient history is a passage of the Mahagyal transmitted at Gyamsansa. The Mahagyal was originally content about geomancy, and because the great master Muhik is said to have composed it, it is called the Mahagyal. In that text, Chun Huang, Ji Huang, In Huang is mentioned, and it connects Gyamsansa and Gyamgangsan by the phrase, the great gold mountain under heaven. The background by which the great master Muhik was able to connect Gyamgangsan and Hoamsa is said to have taken as its precedent the past connecting by Jejang of Korea's Ogasan with the Odasan of the Indian Bodhisattva, Manjusri. In particular, he is also said to have emphasized the point that, whereas Ogasan was aristocratic, Gyamgangsan was popular. To the extent that the great master Muhik showed an obsession with the revival of ancient history, the Gyamgangsan of Korean ancient history has undergone ups and downs since the age of the Yellow Emperor, Dangan. The thunder faith of Gyamgangsan was transmitted to China as the thunder magic faith, and the principle of the sun and Venus was propagated as yin-yang, and the 5 phases. The sun and Venus, as the origin of the dragon and phoenix culture, are such that the movement of the sun relates to the phoenix through yin-yang, and the movement of Venus relates to the 5 phases, and hence to the dragon. This is found today, even in the Sumerian Middle East, and in America. The place name Hoamsa too would be related to the fir tree, but it emphasizes the tree, wood, as in Dangan. What connects Gyamsansa with Gyamgangsan is the Battle of Baeksan River in 663, before the founding of Gyamsansa. The Battle of Baeksan River seems to have concluded at the winter solstice of 663, a sexagenary cycle day that comes around once every 1980 years. The Battle of Baeksan River, the last Battle of Baekje, was the first international war in East Asia, in which the Silatang Allied forces defeated the Baekje Goguryeo Japan Allied states. That a battle centered on the small Baekje in the western part of today's Korean peninsula is called an international war, is because, it is said, the history of Baekje, which at that time had a chance of victory in fighting the Tang dynasty, has undergone much distortion today. Baekje was defeated by Silla, but in the ensuing battle between Silla and Tang, it sided with Silla, and repelled the Tang. Thereafter the maritime kingdom technology of Baekje contributed to Silla's inheriting the land of the gentleman image of Gojoseon. Japan's Kyushu calls to mind the 9 provinces culture of Dangan. In commemoration of Baekje, Gyamsansa was built, and Maitreya was erected by Jinpyo, who had built Gyamsansa on Gyamgangsan, connected with Gyamsansa. The phrase after the heavenly, earthly, and human sovereigns, the great gold mountain under heaven, that appears in the great master Muhik's Mahagyal, can be understood in the same context. If we reinterpret Bingguang Haiyan's theory, the Battle of Baeksan River was a battle possessing the principle whereby the peoples who had spread out with Gyamgangsan at their center once again returned to the origin. The dragon and phoenix culture that sprouted in our country, which had the largest tidal flats in the world in the age of Fixie, before 4000 BC, spread out to all parts of the world. These peoples formed the Sumerians, the Aryans, and the Slavs, and after each living separately, gathered again at Gyamgangsan, owing to climate change. Traces of that time remain even in Africa, and there is also research holding that the language most similar to modern Korean is Kinyarwanda of Africa. Zhang Hyungjin says that the people who first began to return again to the Korean peninsula at that time were the Guangdong people of the Shenong lineage. O Guangil regards this Guangdong people as of the Sumerian lineage. Zhang Hyungjin says that the second to migrate were the Huanan people, who had the bear totem, and that Dangan too is connected with them. O Guangil regards these as the Aryans and says that the Aryans had the bear totem. Combining with the bear totem people who were already there, they are said to have had conflict with the tiger totem. In the West, Lukyuri, who wrote The Emperor Who Came from Babylonia, and Luo Binji and Kim Jae-sup, who analyzed records of the bronze inscriptions, explain this period in detail. Again, according to Bingguang Haiyan's theory, owing to the climate change that appears in the records of the time of Emperor Yao, the former civilization fell, and the representative races of the world's population gathered at Gyamgangsan. At that time the sunlight shone only on Gyamgangsan, and that sunlight gradually broadened so that the Gyeomgangsan civilization spread out again, this being, it is said, the migration of comb pattern pottery and dolmens. Through this, world civilization was revived once more and reached the axial age. That the Venus goddess Venus Astartes distributed in the Middle East has its reason here. The Battle of Baeksan River may be seen as the defeat of the Gyeomgangsan civilization, when the civilization that had left Gyeomgangsan returned once again. Thereafter, Korean history maintained a level of national strength sufficient to guard Gyeomgangsan. Even today, North Korea is, unintentionally, playing the role of guarding Gyeomgangsan. In geomantic theory, it is said that the earth energy too must be guarded if it is to be manifested in the right place at the right time. Muhik, who was as versed in geomancy as in Buddhism, joined forces with Yi Sung-jae in the restoration of ancient history, and this can be regarded as the background of Hoamsa's rise to prominence. That the place Yi Sung-jae chose to practice asceticism, even after the strife of the princes, was Hoamsa, and that he had it built in a style like that of a royal palace, shows his will for the restoration of ancient history. In fact, throughout the Joseon dynasty, this will for restoration was expressed internally, and it is said that in the time of King Gozong, when King was defeated in the Sino-Japanese War, they sought to restore ancient history by restoring the octagonal pavilions throughout the country. In the Joseon period, after Yeogak, the representative of the Westerners faction, wrote a piece about Gyeomgangsan, Jews East Wooninaim Bens came to be sought at Gyeomgangsan. Thereafter Gyeomgangsan became a popular faith, as seen in the poetry of Kim Satgat.